What's going on, everybody? Welcome on in to the Sports Forum podcast, MLB episode 2. We are talking about the NL East. Last week we did the NL West. If you did not catch that episode, please go back and listen to that one on Spotify and on YouTube as well. Myself, Riggs Tamburo. I'm here with Bryson Owens and Anthony Hirsch. Gentlemen, let's not waste any time here. Let's jump straight into the team that was clearly on top in this division all year last year, finished on top. That is the Atlanta Braves, finishing at 104-58 on the year. Dominant, 52-29 at home and 52-29 on the road. It's about as good and as clean as it gets there. Bryson, I want to jump on over to you, man. Just looking at the Braves here, coming off of last year, were you impressed with what this baseball team did?
Oh, yeah, you have to be impressed with what they did for a number of reasons. One, how rare is it to see a team win 90 games in the regular season and be 14 games behind the leader? That's what they did. They were 14 games ahead of the Philadelphia Phillies last year, who finished with 90 wins. That's a remarkable finish to the regular season for the Braves. They came up short in the postseason, but they were so dominant in so many areas. They were number one in the MLB in home runs hit by almost 60. It was 307. The next closest was the Dodgers at 249. Like almost 60 home runs better than second place. They were number one in batting average. And this was all done with a lot of their pitching was a little bit come and go. They were about a little bit better than league average in terms of team ERA. A lot of that had to do with, I believe it was both Max Fried and Charlie Morton missed some time last season due to injuries. Both those guys are coming back. Those are their top three guys in their rotation. I'd put up there with anyone in the MLB. I'm a big Spencer Strider fan. Max Fried is one of the best pitchers in baseball,
100%.
in my opinion. Charlie Morton, a very, very good number 3 pitcher in a rotation. So you just have to be impressed with what they have. They have the reigning MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr. This team is loaded from top to bottom. And I know a lot of people, when they started last season, they lost Freddie Freeman. Everyone's like, what's going to happen now? They lost a franchise legend. They got about as good a replacement as they could with Matt Olson, who came out last season with just a stellar year, 40 home runs hit, a 265 batting average, really good season by his replacement. So loaded lineup from top to bottom. One of the best teams from the regular season last year for sure.
Absolutely, man. You're nailing it. Anthony, I know you have written the article, man, on sportsforumdenver.com. Folks, if you want to go along with us, go ahead and check that out, whether you want to do it now or just do it when you get off the show, and go ahead and check that out one more time, sportsforumdenver.com. But Anthony, your thoughts here, man. Bryson's pointing out everything good about this team. Let me ask you, what worries you about this baseball team heading into 2024?
I think the biggest concern for me is going to be that bullpen. Yes, they were able to get a couple of new arms in there. They were able to get some help in the outfield, getting Jared Kalenic from Seattle. I think that's going to very much help solidify the outfield. But for the pitching staff right here, they lost so many big-name arms in their bullpen, and they didn't get too many back. They're going to be relying heavily on a lot of younger arms coming up from AAA, AA. They're kind of using the spring training time to assess the talent of some of these younger arms and seeing if any of these guys, even if they're slated in the future to become starters, maybe if they can get, a little bit of a leap into the MLB, get in a little bit sooner because they're willing to slide into the bullpen and eat up innings right there. Overall, that's going to be my biggest, concern for this team. And also, we can't ignore the fact that when it comes to the postseason, at least the last 2 seasons, they fall apart. And it's all across the board. They can't pitch. They can't hit. It's a different team when you get into October than it is for 162 during the regular season. They need to figure out a way to be more consistent and to be able to bring that into the postseason. And it's been the Phillies. It's been the thorn in their side for the past 2 years now. I do think bringing in a guy like Chris Sale, he's going to slide in if he's able to stay healthy at the number 3 starter spot right there. He is one of those guys where he's spent his entire career in the American League. Him coming over to the National League with that deceptive lefty motion, it's going to be really tough for NL hitters to pick up on. I've been looking at him in spring training. The dude's already throwing 97. I know he's a little bit up there in age, and the injuries have been a major concern for him the past couple of years. He's looking really good this year, and he's probably looking the healthiest he has in a long time. Overall, I'm really confident about this team. I think they're going to have maybe even a slightly better season than last year. It's going to be tough. The division's going to be a lot tougher. A couple teams that are going to be back. You have to believe the Mets are going to be right back there. But if they're able to even, sniff a little bit of what their offense looked like from last year, and if Ronald Acuna is able to even come close to hitting 40 bombs, stealing 70 bases, you have to believe this team will be winning their 7th straight NL East title.
I want to point out,
Yeah.
I'm I'm not as concerned with the bullpen as Anthony is. Last season, it finished number 2 in saves. They were 5th in holds last season. The bullpen was really good for them last year. They have guys like Tyler Matzik and AJ Minter still in that bullpen. It's not the deepest one in the MLB, but when you've got a starting lineup like they have, or starting rotation like they have, with those 4 guys when he mentioned Chris Sale, and then you have at least 2 or 3 bullpen guys you can trust on a daily basis, I'm not as concerned with the bullpen as Anthony is.
I don't know. There's some big names leaving this bullpen. I mean, I'm looking right here. Couple big names to leave the bullpen. Brad Hand was phenomenal last year. You have Kirby Yates leaving. Colin McHugh, who has been just a workhorse for this, for the parts of the starting rotation, and then also sliding into the bullpen right there. Those alone are really big names, and also losing a guy like Soroka. He was one of these guys who could go in and be a 5th starter and then could go into the bullpen, eat up 2 to 3 innings. I do think that they're going to have to figure out a way. I don't think it's impossible, and I think that some of the advancements of their offense, of how good their offense is, how much of a power hitting offense there are, can kind of help to alleviate some of the pressures, left by the bullpen. But I still have to think, when you get late into games, you need a bullpen that can hold leads. They need to prove it to me, and some of these younger arms need to prove it before I'm completely sold on them. But again, I'm sold enough to say that they're going to win the division.
The fellas going back and forth here on the bullpen, the pitching staff. I'm liking what we're talking about, guys. Look, man, I know, dude. But, hey, look. So, first of all, I think top to bottom, starters, bullpen, whatever, I think they're easily a top 5 pitching staff across the board in the league. I just feel like they are. Just the big 4 on the board there, Strider, Fried, Morton, Sale. Those 4 dudes right there are a problem for any offense in the league. So, really feel good about that. The bullpen, I guess we'll see if there's any late moves. I'm kind of right in between both of you guys. Anthony, I am worried about him, but Bryson at the same time, I'm not that worried about him either. So I'm kind of like 50-50 there. But looking at the lineup, you got Acuna, Albies, Austin Riley, Olsen, Azuna, Harris, Murphy, Kalenic, and Arcia. Anthony, would you say that this lineup here is top 5 in the MLB?
No, it's the top offense in baseball, and it's not close. I mean, when you have 4 or 5 guys that are hitting above 30 bombs, they're putting up video games numbers. It's like when you hop on the show and you get into my league, you play 162, and you're just putting up video game numbers out there. That's what the starting lineup is for Atlanta, and I think they're going to replicate it. I don't see them having – I don't see Acuna going out and just, putting up numbers that have literally never been seen before, like last season, putting up the 40-70 season, which has literally never been done before. I think pitching overall across the league is going to be responding to some of the rule changes a little bit more this year. I expect to see ERAs across the board down a little bit. I don't think the offense is going to be quite as powerful, quite as, just awe-inspired as last year, but I still think it's going to be the top offense in baseball.
Anthony, would you say that Acuna has a true shot at being the NL MVP?
100%. The biggest thing for him is going to be staying healthy. That's over the course of his career. That's been the biggest thing for him. When you have a 5-tool player like that, the one thing, you want to make sure that he's not extending himself too short, not stretching himself too thin, where it's like, when you have to steal 70 bags and then you have to get right back there into the outfield and then go up and get 4 or 5 ABs a game, that stress is going to add up over the course of the season. I hope that they give him his days off over the course of the season where we get to the playoff time. I think that was another thing where it's like you're almost a little too concerned about the stats at the end of last season where you're maybe not giving days off to guys where you should have. And I think they really paid the ultimate price come playoff time.
Well, we know how Anthony feels about the Atlanta Braves at this point, folks. But Bryson, 101.5 is where the win total is set at. They hit 104 last year. They can lose 2 more games than they lost last year and get it done. Are you on the over here?
Yeah, I like the over for this team. I mean, they had the 104, like you mentioned last year. It was a very similar team as was a year ago. I mean, the batting lineup alone, I believe the only change to this batting order was Jared Kelenic in the outfield. I think he's the only new player in that starting lineup. The rotation's incredible. We talked about the bullpen. Some issues there might slow down the Braves a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Braves should clear that over mark.
Anthony's on the over. Bryson's on the over. I am on the over. We are going over for the Atlanta Braves here, expecting a very, very good season out of them. Best of luck to you guys if you are a Braves fan. But let's jump on down to the number 2 team in the division as of last year. Anthony, I'll come to you here, man. You had mentioned in your article They are postseason dogs, and they've showed it now 2 years in a row here. With that said, they won 90 games. They lost 72 games. They were good at home. They struggled a little bit on the road, 41-40, but still above 500 there. How you feeling about the Phillies coming into this year? Take the postseason out of it. In the regular season, are they a true threat?
They are. I don't think they're going to be a true threat to win the division. I think that there's going to be times where they do get close. I don't think that true point of separation is going to happen until maybe August, like getting into early September right there. I think the majority of the season, this is going to be a tightly contended NL East race. The Phillies, they didn't make many moves of the offseason. They feel very confident in the group of guys that they have coming back. One of the biggest reasons I think they are going to be better than last year. One, last year's record is better than the season prior. They keep making advancements, the right advancements under Rob Thompson every single year to keep winning more games in the regular season. Number two, I think Aaron Nola had a really bad year last year, and I think some of that was some undiagnosed injury stuff, some arm soreness. He just wasn't really able to have the stuff that we know Aaron Nola can have. I expect him to be back and better than ever this year. They re-signed him. They also re-signed Zach Wheeler, so you were able to keep the top of your rotation. And I think you have to take the fact that Bryce Harper is going to be healthy for the entire season. If you take that fact alone, it's going to be the first full season. We'll see for now. But he will be making that full-time transition over there to first base. So you have to think that that's going to help his legs out a little bit so he doesn't have to be running around in the outfield in between ABs, less chance of injury playing at first right there. I think for those reasons alone, this is a better team. I don't think that they will win the division, but I think they're going to be better than like they were in the regular season last season.
Bryson, I want to ask you something, man, about this lineup, because Anthony mentioned a couple guys struggling at certain points, obviously Nola being the big one. I mean, that's not a secret. The dude was just bad, flat out. But you look at the batting order, the number one guy on the board, Kyle Schwarber, the first guy up. I know he's more of the big bomb hitter, so he strikes out a lot and all that, but a 2-2-3, to me, that is struggling. I think he should be a 2.45 or better guy, truly a 2.5 or better kind of guy here. So you look at the lineup: Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Real Muto, Stott, Baum, Castellanos, Marsh, and Rojas. How do you rank this one here, at least for the division? Out of 5, where do you put this batting order?
I think they're the second best batting order in this division. They're the only one outside of the Braves we just talked about for this division that they're top 10 in terms of batting average and home runs hit. Their biggest thing is strikeouts. They have a lot of guys who are big strikeout, swing and miss type guys, swing for the fences type of players. Kyle Schwarber right up there at the top of that lineup. I mean, Anthony talked about it last show we did about the kind of transition from a traditional leadoff hitter where it was usually a guy who'd get on base, he'd bat like a 320 average, be a speed guy, be able to get on first, steal second, set up scoring position there. Kyle Schwarber is the exact opposite of that. This guy's he's not gonna bat above 220 probably. That's how he is most of his career. He's probably gonna hit somewhere around 35 home runs, so you can count on that for him. But he's not gonna steal bases. He has, I think it's like less than 30 career stolen bases in eight seasons in the MLB. So he's not a base stealer. He's not a consistent hitter when it comes to getting on base in general. So he's very much a different type of leadoff guy. But if there's a batting order that can go toe to toe with the Atlanta Braves, this might be one of the ones you put up there with the best. So it's not quite as deep top to bottom. But when you talk about the talent of Schwarber, Turner, Harper, and Real Muto just in the top 4, Trey Turner's going to have a better season than he did last year. He had one of the toughest stretches in baseball last season. He's going to be better this season.
I mean, look at Turner and Harper, both a 2.82, Schwarber a 2.23. You got Real Muto there at 2.55. I'll be honest, man, I think all those guys can be better, but I don't know if Harper and Turner are going to be 2.8 or better this year. If they are, and they can get a guy like Kyle Schwarber up to that 2.4, 2.5, watch out. This could be a problem here. My only thing is, if they want to put Kyle Schwarber in here, I don't get why he's the number one guy.
I'll tell you why.
Please tell me, because I don't get it. There's no one on base.
This isn't an experiment anymore. This isn't like a manager saying, "Oh, I want to try this crazy new thing, and we'll just toss him at one and see if it works." You have to give credit to the depth of this Phillies order because they see enough merit, and you have to scratch out the first at bat because when he comes up the first time, there's no one on base every time if he's a leadoff guy. But there's such a high rate of players being on base when he comes up through his 2 through 4, 2 through 5 at bats in baseball games, where he actually averages the most runners on base per plate appearance on this team, and he's the number one hitter. It's a really good spot for a power hitter, and I think the fact that no other team really does it or has a guy who fits that mold like Kyle Schwarber does for the Phillies does give them an advantage, especially when you get into, later in games when you need clutch hits. I think he's the kind of guy where it's like, he has that big play power. He has that ability to hit one out at any given time. I think that's really dangerous for a lineup.
I do also think part of why having Schwarber batting first this season is so confident for the Phillies is having Trey Turner batting second. He's almost like a second leadoff guy if Kyle Schwarber doesn't happen to get on base. Because you look at the 4 seasons before last year when he had at least 120 games played. He had a 271 batting average with 43 stolen bases, 298, 35. He had a 328 batting average season in 2021 with 32 stolen bases, 298 with 27 in 2022. So, like I mentioned, last year, really bit of a down year. He had one of the toughest stretches. I think it was like a month and a half long stretch where he couldn't get a hit. It was a rough one for Trey Turner last season. He's going to be better this year, and it gives the Phillies almost a second leadoff guy just in case Schwarber doesn't get on base to start a game.
Man, look, y'all are making a lot of good points here. And I think you kind of shut down what I was saying because you're right. He did lead the team in RBIs. If you look at Kyle Schwarber with 98 RBIs. So you're right about that. It's just so weird to see him in the one spot because it just feels like he's going yard or he ain't doing shit. And that's the only reason why I don't really get him at 1. But Anthony, you make a good point. Second time through, third time through, fourth time through. Okay. That makes sense of why. And then Bryson, you make a good point there. Trey Turner is there. If Schwarber does just go, 3 pitches, 3 strikes, and he's out of there, then they can kind of set up Bryce Harper and Real Muto. So you make a good point here, but it's definitely not a common strategy across the league for how you set up your lineups. But let's jump on over to the pitching here. We got Zach Wheeler on top with a 3.53, Aaron Nola, the number 2, 3.84, Ranger Suarez, 4.11, Walker at a 4.73. He struggled last year. You got Chris Sanchez at 4.17 or 4.18, and then Lorenzen at 4.75. Really, you got 4 4s in there. You got 2 mid to high 3s in there. Anthony, this pitching staff, man, first of all, is Zach Wheeler the best guy in this staff? And do you really think this pitching staff for an entire season is good enough to put this team in contention?
Despite the struggles of last year, I still have to put Aaron Nola at 1 right there because at his best, he is better at Zach Wheeler at his best. I think he has slightly better stuff. I think his location is a little bit better. He can consistently go deeper into games than Wheeler, but Wheeler's a little bit more consistent as we saw last season. It might not have been a shining season for Zach Wheeler, but still he was really solid out of that 2 spot for them. I do think that this team, I think this is one of the bigger concerns for this team is the starting rotation here. I just don't want to see a situation where one of the top guys, if it's Nola or Wheeler, if they start struggling early, I think the front office has to be aggressive in going out and grabbing a guy well before the trade deadline, like earlier in the season. I know there's going to be pitchers available. There's going to be teams out the gate that struggle and are going to be looking to get rid of, some contracts, trying to get some picks back, trying to get some young talent back. I feel like that's the time of the season where they should be assessing if they truly do need to bring in a new starting pitcher. Unless there's unless they have someone that they're really confident with in their farm system, I do think this starting rotation needs a little bit of a bolster.
Man, oh man, I'm not sold on this pitching staff, man. They really scare me. I'm not convinced that Nola's just gonna bounce back to Aaron Nola. Like I didn't see anything at the end of the year that made me think he was trending in the right direction. I actually do think Wheeler is probably the number 1 guy, and I'll tell you who my sleeper on this staff is, who I think could emerge as very well the best arm on the staff, is Ranger Suarez. I really like how the guy throws the baseball. He doesn't really make it that deep into games. I think that's my one thing for him this year is, can he make it a little bit deeper? You look at the innings pitched last year of the big 4 guys on the board, you got 185, 185, 158, and only 149 there for Ranger Suarez. So he doesn't go deep enough. If he can get that down, man, and avoid the big inning, because that's the other thing is he's one of those guys where shut you down, and then gives up 5. And you're like, oh my God.
They're not coming back on.
Yeah, dude. it's really bad for Suarez. So if he can lock in, though, I really like how he throws the baseball, and I'm a fan of his stuff. But looking here, guys, at the win total for the season, 90.5 is what it's set out. Obviously, last year we said at 90 overall. So looking at this one here, man, do they go over 90.5? Anthony, let's start with you, man. Really, all they got to do is be one game better.
I truly do. I believe they will. And I think the fact that you do have Harper in, like earlier in the season, we're not so concerned about wins and losses because you're trying to assess the talent out there. You're trying to kind of sneak out this winning formula that's going to help you throughout the course of the regular season. When you have Harper back through those games, there's going to be wins that you didn't even think about as wins or losses early in the season last year. They're just going to be like those de facto wins. You know, you look at it, you don't think twice about it, but you better believe come October, those are the wins that make the difference in terms of 90 wins, 91, 92 wins. I think the pitching staff comes back, and I do think they answer some questions. I do believe, like you're saying, Riggs, I know you're not as confident as I am with this. I do think that Nola comes back and he becomes the Nola that we know he can be. If they're able to do that, even if it's another win or two in that span, I think this is a better team slightly than last year. And I do like the fact that they're going to go over 90 and a half.
Well, the reason I'm stuck here is because I do think they had a down year. Just like you're saying, I do think the pitching staff struggled. I do think Harper being out was a big thing to consider. And so those are all reasons why I'm like, well, if they're all good to go this year, why would you not go over? But I got to be honest, man, I don't believe this is better than a 90-win baseball team. I think they're going to be right there between 88 and 90. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go against you here. I'm going to say under 90.5. So, Bryson, you are the icebreaker, man. Which way you going?
I'm going to go with the over for this one for a few reasons. One of them, like what Anthony was saying, a lot of guys ready to go from the start of the season instead of having to come back middle of the way through the season. Part of what I said with Trey Turner is a big part of this offense. I think he's not going to have that just horrendous stretch in the middle of the season like he did last year. And the other big thing, we'll get to a couple of these teams in this division later. I think a couple of these teams in this division are going to be worse than they were last year. And that's going to be more wins. It's going to be better for the Phillies this season. So I think over here, and like Anthony was saying, 2 straight seasons over, they got better in the regular season. I don't know if they're going to get too much better. I see them being like a 92-win team this season.
Ooh, all right. These boys both going barely over. I'm going to go barely under. I don't blame you guys at all for going with the over. I'm right there, man. If it was like 89.5, I might go over. I think they are a 90-win baseball team. The margin is so small here. It's going to be close. Good luck to you guys, whichever way you choose to go. But let's jump on over here to the third team on the board. And this team is a wild card, in my opinion, every single year. I'm trying to figure them out. The Miami Marlins, 84-78 overall, 51.9% win percentage, 46-35. They're at home. Struggle a little bit on the road, 38-43. Obviously, they have guys like Alcantara, Lazardo, guys that we're very, very fond of. But Anthony mentions in his article, very young team, very talented team, but they do have some learning to do. Anthony, your quick overview of the Miami Marlins heading in here to 2024.
I'm a little bit concerned. A couple of reasons why. First of all, big story a couple of years ago, Kim Ng, she got promoted to be the general manager of this team. And at least from the outside looking in, it seemed like she did a phenomenal job in turning around the culture of this team. Over the past couple of years, I think they've been making progressions every single season to the point where they did get to the playoffs last year. I know they got knocked out by the Phillies, but that was still a big accomplishment for them. Now she's out of there. They have a new president of baseball operations in. I'm not a huge fan of this move. I think that she brought so much to this team. I'm not sold on this new guy coming in. Need to see maybe a season or two of moves that he made. I'm just taking a look at the moves they made during the offseason, and they didn't make many. Look, we knew that Sandy Alcantara is going to be out for the entire season with a Tommy John surgery. Not exactly sure what's going on there. It does seem like this recovery timetable is a little bit longer than normal. With the new process they have for Tommy John, recovery time now is closer to like 6 to 9 months as opposed to a whole year.
It's crazy.
He got the surgery in October, and they're saying there's not a shot he's pitching at any point in 2024. I think that's slightly interesting right there. I don't know why they didn't go out and get a big name pitcher. If you're saying this is a team that you think that you can be a playoff team year in, year out, you go get a number one pitcher or at least a stopgap arm that could go into that spot. They're going to have Luzardo going in there. He's a lefty out of Miami, and I do think that he's a really good 3 pitcher, solid number 2 guy. He's not an ace. He just isn't an ace. Again, that's my biggest concern for this team. To their credit, though, they did go out. They got Tim Anderson in the offseason. He will be shortstop aside from a rise over there. I do think that's going to become, at least defensively, really good middle infield between the two of them. And we'll see if Tim Anderson maybe going to the NL, he's able to, capitalize off of some of these NL pitchers that aren't so familiar with how he hits, pitches that he's more susceptible to. So I'll give him that little bit, but overall, I am worried about the Marlins.
A lot of worries here, man. A lot of question marks for the Miami Marlins. Bryson, let's take a look here, man, at the rest of the pitchers. Because like you mentioned, Anthony, if you look at their projected pitchers, they do have Alcantara as of today as a no-go. He is not going in any way. They don't see him being in there. So you got Luzardo on top, like you mentioned, 3.86 ERA. You got Yuri Perez there at 3.94, AJ at 3.88, Weathers at 4.57, and Trevor Rogers at a 4.25. This pitching staff to me is a pitching staff that could be really good, but they also could struggle the entire season. Bryson, how do you see it going?
Yeah, I see it as a very similar way. This seems like one of the most average pitching staffs in baseball this season. It's kind of how I feel about it, especially with Alcantara out. With Alcantara, that gives you a big boost because, like Anthony was saying, their number 2 is no longer going to have to be an ace for them. He gets to be the number 2 like he actually is. They have their ace who can go. We know what Alcantara can do. He can every night if he wanted to. It seemed like we never saw him leave ball games early when he was healthy. Having him gone is a big blow to them. They were just above league average last year in terms of team ERA at 4.21. League average was 4.33. You probably figure it's a little bit worse because of Alcantara being gone. It's probably going to be closer to about 4.5 team ERA. They're just above league average in terms of saves. They had 43 saves. League average was 41. So literally last season, this was as mediocre a pitching staff, as average a pitching staff as you can have in the MLB. And you figure it's probably going to be a little bit worse this season. So I am very concerned about the pitching for the Marlins.
I think the word average, you nailed it on the head there, man. That's the word. They are average. They are not a bad pitching staff. They are not a good pitching staff, and they very well could sway either way as the season goes on. But Anthony, they got an average pitching staff. Let's take a look here, man, at their projected lineup. You got Reyes on top there, Josh Bell, Berger, Chisholm, Anderson, Sanchez, Garcia, De La Cruz, and Bethancourt. How do you rank this lineup, man? Because part of it, I look at it and I'm like, ooh, that's a dangerous 3 guys there. But you get towards the bottom half of this lineup and it's really not that intimidating.
Yeah, I probably have to slate this as the 4th best offense, 2nd worst in the division as it stands right now.
Ooh.
I think that a bunch of the success that we saw last year was because Luis Ariz had the best average we've seen in freaking years. Like for 3 months of the start of the season right there, everyone was saying this dude has a legitimate shot to get to that magical 400 number that hasn't been achieved since the 70s. That will probably never be achieved again. He was getting put in that conversation. He ended up finishing the year 354 average, which is still insane. I can't remember the last time anyone finished above 350. I just don't see him being able to do it again this year with how difficult it is to hit in this league when you're facing the best pitchers day in, day out. It's going to be so hard to replicate that performance. And if he's not getting on base at that kind of rate, I think overall this offense will struggle. You said one guy right there I want to mention a little bit, Jazz Chisholm. This guy, he has a ton of swag. I love the way this dude plays. But at the end of the day, for the amount of hype coming in about this guy, I think we need to see that kind of, career year where this is my defining year where I'm putting myself on the map. We just haven't seen it yet. I need to see a season where he gets to at least above 250, maybe gets the power numbers above 20 bombs right there. And if he's able to maintain what he's able to do in the speed game and defensively, I'd feel a little bit more sure about this. But overall, if Ariz doesn't have quite the same level of success as he did last year, I think this offense overall looks worse than it did a season ago.
I'm right there with you, man. Once again, so we're saying average and average. This is an average baseball team, folks. They're 3rd in the division, so we know they're average. But at the end of the day, tough to see them taking leaps forward here. But Bryson, before we get in, man, to the win total, Anthony mentions in here, these guys lost in the wild card round against the Phillies. Do you see them punching their ticket again to the postseason, or would you consider this a down year where that's probably not in the cards for them?
I think this is going to be a down year for them, unfortunately. I'm not super high on this team. A lot of it has to do with the probably now average to below average pitching staff, like we mentioned. A lot of it has to do with the fact that these Marlins are banking on so much magic that they had captured in a bottle last season, or trying to revive people's career. Because like Anthony mentioned, you probably aren't going to have Arraez batting 350 again. It's really hard to lead the league in batting 2 years in a row. So it's hard to bank on that. Jake Berger had a phenomenal career season, 34 home runs, 80 RBIs hit last year. The previous 2 years combined, he had 9 home runs. So it's hard to just bank on him now consistently being a 30 home run guy. And they're really banking on Tim Anderson having a comeback in his career. His last 2 seasons, 1 home run hit, 245 average. 2 years ago, 6 home runs hit, 300 average. He's a long ways away from when people were thinking Tim Anderson was going to be one of the top shortstops in baseball. And so the Marlins are banking on too many more magical things happening, which don't always happen in baseball. You get them for one season. It's hard to bank on those 2 years in a row. So I'm a little bit down on these guys.
Well, let's take a look here, man, at the win total. Once again, last year, guys, 84 total wins. It is a sizable difference this year, Anthony. 78.5 wins on the year, man. Can they get this done?
The one thing I'm kind of taking away from the baseball team right here, I'm looking more at the betting side of this number. It's concerning to me the fact that the books are on to the same things that we are, because that's why that total is so much lower. I still think they go under that number, though, hesitantly. I think Bryson brought up something great. When we're talking about the fact that we think that the Phillies are going to go over, the Braves are going to go over, I think some of these wins, if you look, across the division, I think the Marlins are going to be one of those teams that give up wins compared to last year. I think it's going to be really tough sledding against the Phillies, the Braves, even against the Mets. So divisional play is going to be really tricky for them. I don't know. Like Bryson's saying, they just need too many things to happen. They're taking too many risks this season for the chance of success to pay off. Overall, Sandy Alcantara being out means that the Marlins are going to be out of the postseason.
Ooh, there you go. No Sandy, no postseason. Look, man, I'm right there with you. I know I took the under for the Phillies, but I'm actually on the exact same train you are. The wins got to come from somewhere. I think they come because the Miami just sucks. I don't see them putting up much more, honestly, than like 2.5 runs a game. I really don't think they're going to average much more than that. And you look at the pitching staff, they are one injury. Like if Luzardo goes down, these guys might win like 65 games. Like they are one injury from some bad stuff happening. I can't get on the train. Anthony going under. I'm going under. Bryson, how you feeling?
Yeah, this one's really tricky because even if you aren't high on the Marlins, like we clearly aren't, how much are you under on them to see them losing 7 more games than they did last year? Like that's a big drop off in terms of wins. It's a bit risky, but I'm with you guys on the under. I don't think they're going to be great this year.
There you go, guys. Every single one of us going with the under. So good luck to you there. 78.5, just not gonna get there. But let's jump on over here to the 4th team and Anthony Hirsch, who is a Yankees fan, folks. We're going to let him have the floor here. Anthony, if you could do me a favor, take any bias out of it, my man. Looking at the Mets, I know the very first thing you said in your article was a 3-word sentence. You said, "Oh, the Mets." Why are you saying that?
I mean, you just have to look at last year. Coming into last year, in the 2022 campaign, coming off a 100-win playoff season, they were looking like they were primed to go out and compete with the Braves to win the division. One of the biggest collapses I've seen in baseball over the past 10 years, in my opinion. You go out, you land massive names like you land a Scherzer. You go out and you trade them because it didn't work out, and you knew that's how bad the beginning of the season was last year. They knew by like midsummer that half their talent that they had just signed, they needed to go out and trade away again because they've messed up. It wasn't paying off on the field, and money-wise, they couldn't sign anyone else because they're giving these guys just buttloads of money. I don't know. Last year, it was just a very disappointing season for them. I will say, getting into this season, they've completely revamped the front office. Same thing with the Marlins. They have a new president of baseball operations in there. I think he's going to right the ship for them. And they also end the Buck Showalter experiment. I didn't really like overall. I think Buck Showalter will go down as a great manager in baseball. What he did with the Yankees in the 90s and then going, being the longtime manager for the Orioles there, it just didn't work out for the Mets. That's not the mold of a current MLB manager. The current MLB skipper is a guy who just retired, who is a younger guy who can relate to the players. And if you look across the league, that's why that trend is so prevalent. The Buck Showalter days are over. They're getting a guy, Carlos Mendoza, in there. He was a longtime Yankees bench coach. I really like this guy. For all the times that Aaron Boone threw his temper tantrum, his hissy fits, he would be the guy that would step in and be the acting manager. And I really like some of the moves that he made in specific games, certain guys he brought in, just the way that he handled the team. I think overall it's going to be a huge plus. And then I look at the top of the pitching staff right there, getting a guy like Luis Severino over from the Yankees. Look at the numbers last year. I understand they were not pretty. They didn't look good. This is a guy that's been plagued by the injury bug, but I will say when he's healthy, when he's in the lineup, one of the most electric fastballs in baseball, and he has like 2 to 3 variations of that fastball where he has a sinker off of it and he has that cutter. So you could be seeing 95, getting pumped right down Broadway. It can make that left-hand turn or right-hand hook almost impossible to hit as a hitter. So I do think that if he's able to stay healthy, they might have a new weapon at the top of the rotation.
I do want to say real quick, with the Severino part, the key word that you mentioned, Anthony, or key phrase is if he can stay healthy. And there's one thing that's like a trend in baseball, especially with pitchers. You don't get healthier as you get older. Look at guys like DeGrom. He gets injured more frequently than he ever has before, and he's with one major injury every season now. He's constantly hurt. You look at these pitchers, as they get older, they suffer one injury, and they don't magically just all of a sudden stay healthy. Severino's probably going to get nicked at least some point in the season because it's just the trend of his career right now. And yes, he's a great pitcher when he's healthy, like you mentioned. But if you're banking on that as your ace for a starting rotations, that's not a great sign for the Mets, in my opinion.
That's fair enough. I
don't
like that move, like by itself, him being. I also don't think that he's going to be the de facto ace for this team. I think he's probably, when it's all said and done, he'll probably slide into that 3, maybe that 2 spot. I think Jose Quintana is still the ace for this team. He does need to go out and he does need to pitch better than last season. That's no secret. But I do think he is still the ace right there. But they did go up and they got Sean Manaea. I know it was another down year for him last year, but overall, it was a down year for pitchers last year. ERAs were elevated across the board. I really like Sean Manaea. I was so freaking pissed when the Yankees didn't go out and trade for him last trade deadline. I was like, you're going to go out and get Frankie Montas and leave him on the board? I think this is an elite pitcher, and I do think that he's going to excel with the Mets. I think this is one of their sneaky moves they made this offseason that's going to pay off big time for them.
Their big 5 starters here from top to bottom. You got Quintana there, 4.41 ERA, Severino 4.57, Manaea 4.28, Hauser at 4.54, and Trevor, I always say this one wrong, Mahil, I don't know. We're going to leave it at what it is, but 4.73 there. So not one guy below a 4.28 on all 5 pitchers here. So definitely struggling. Anthony, Bryson, you as well. You guys are mentioning they're bringing in pitchers that are on down years, but we know them to be better pitchers than what they're getting them at right now. So maybe they got some steals. Maybe they found some value with some pitchers. I would be surprised if 2 of these guys don't finish in the upper 3s. I think they can break out of this 4 streak they got going in this pitching department. So let me ask you, Bryson, of the 5 teams in this division, looking at this big 5 pitching staff, where do they rank?
I think I'm going to slide them into 3rd. I think they're behind the Braves and the Phillies. I think the Braves and Phillies, their top end is just, especially in the rotation, their top 2 or 3 guys are just so much better than the rest of this division that kind of puts them over the top of everyone. But with the Mets, I think that the new additions that they've made, that puts them ahead of the Marlins. And of course, we're going to get to the Nationals later, but I could be on the Mets pitching staff and we could be ahead of the Nationals. So I'm going to put them around 3rd, but it's not so much that I'm confident in them being that good. It's I think the Marlins and Nationals take a step back, and the Phillies and Braves are just that much better.
Anthony, what's your take here, man, on Adrian Hauser? Because the dude's had quite the career. He's bounced around a little bit. When he's on, he looks really, really good. But a 4.54 last year, 125 innings pitched, 7 and 8 in the win and loss category. Do you think he bounces back here and kind of turns it around, or is this kind of who he is nowadays?
I hate to say this because I hope he makes a bounce back and he turns around. I just don't really see it happening. I think he's kind of past that point in his career. And overall, nothing is getting easier for pitchers in the MLB, which is some of the timing rules, the fact that base runners are now able to time off of a pitch clock. There's a couple of things that are just so different from in his earlier days. I just feel like the game in a couple of ways have almost passed him by a little bit. Now, that's not saying that he can't come back this year, get his ERA back into the threes, and be a decent starter for the Mets and be a value piece there at the 4-5 spot. But I could even see a scenario that he struggles in his first couple of outings, and they might try to find someone else to fill in that fifth slot, and he might take that trip down to the bullpen.
Man, it's tough, man, because I tell you what, though, at number 4, he's a good number 4. That's the only thing I'll throw out there. He's not a 1, 2, or 3 guy, but I think at 4, it's the right spot for him. But hey, let's take a look here at the projected lineup. You got Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil. We'll see if he can come back and be healthy. Lindor, Pete Alonso, Francisco Alvarez, Marte, Choi, Harrison Bader, and Brett Beatty. Bryson, Harrison Baderade. Are you drinking the Baderade here on this lineup, or are you not in on this lineup here? Because I tell you what, there are some big names here.
There are some big names, and this is one of the harder lineups to judge in baseball because they might be one of the most boom or bust lineups in the entire league. They were below league average in terms of batting average last season, but to their credit, they were top 10 in home runs. They hit a ton of bombs. They strike out a ton. They don't have a great batting average as a team overall. So you're really banking on guys like Pete Alonso, Harrison Bader, Francisco Lindor being at that consistent level where they are somewhere around a 260 average, which still isn't like wow numbers, but 260, if they can hit like 30 home runs with that 260 average, you're going to live with that. I'm not super sold on that happening for this team. I think this is a talented lineup, but the fact that it's so inconsistent and you have a better chance of striking these guys out than anything else scares me a lot with this team.
Fair. You look here, man, Anthony, at the averages, man, the best average on the entire team is Jeff McNeil, who right now is a little bit banged up there with a .279. Is there anybody in this lineup that you could see breaking into the threes here and kind of carrying this whole hitting department?
I'm going to throw out maybe a little bit of a surprise name out there. And I know it's kind of hard to say that, an aging guy is going to have that kind of comeback and breakout season. But I'm equating this very much to one of those later seasons from Matt Kemp before he retired. One of these resurgent seasons that you almost don't see coming. I really like Starlin Marte to get back to where we know he can be, because I know he can be a 300 hitter that blasts about 20 out, is able to provide about 80, 85 in the RBI department. I think he had a down year last year, but I think when the Mets are right, if you just look over the past couple of years, the leading man behind that, yes, it's been Pete Alonso, but he's always there. He's always going to be providing power in key spots and key games, key situations. It's really this Starlin Marte right here who's going to be the one to get it done. I think he has a great bounce back year, and I think right now, I'm looking at some of these lineup projections. I know they have him slated like 5 or 6. I think he could have a really hot start to the season and even get bumped up, maybe 2-3 hitter, able to help out, these averages at the top of the lineup, so that when guys like Lindor and Alonso get on or come up to the plate, they have runners in front of them, and their home runs mean that much more. I really like Marte to have another breakout season.
I'm really glad that you said Marte, because that's the exact guy I was thinking too. So I'm glad we're kind of thinking similarly here, because I think he can be one of those guys that kind of carries this lineup. He's number 6 right now in the lineup. If he can be hot, he's going to set up Nimmo, McNeil, Lindor, Alonso every single time through. That could be a serious, serious problem here. So I like that, but I want to ask you, Anthony, about one more batter before we talk here about the over-under win total. That's Pete Alonso, man. He's number 4 in the lineup. 570 at bats last year, 40 home runs, 110 RBIs, and a .249 average. Will he take a step up or a step back this season?
It depends how you grade last season. Like, obviously, the power numbers are very promising for him. The numbers. I mean, it's tough to say. I think for him, if we're going to say that at the end of the year he has a good season, I think that the home run numbers are down, the RBI numbers are down, and the average is way up. The strikeouts are way down. I think that they're going to need to get a hitting coach in. Part of the reason why they cleared house this offseason, because of the woes of the hitting department and these low averages, I think they're going to try to get a hitting coach in there that's going to express to him, hey, look, Pete, you can't be a guess hitter 100% of the time. I get when you guess right, it looks really good out there. But when you guess wrong, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're hurting the team. I think they're going to try to get him more of in a place where he can see and react to pitches, maybe try to pick out, early count fastballs instead of letting counts get so deep where he just looks silly, 3 pitches in a row. I think if they're able to get someone like that in, and if he's able to get that average up, closer to like 250 and bring the strikeouts closer to around even under 100 would be the perfect number for him. I really like what he can do, not only for his numbers, but overall for this team. He can be that guy who is the power machine, who is really the responsible for why runs are driven in over the course of the season.
Dude, I think you nailed it again here, because I think you're right. If his average goes up, his RBIs, 110, like, to go over that would just be absurd. And then 40 home runs, I think he's in that 35 home run department, 95 to 100 RBIs. And I agree with you, his 249, if he can get that to a 2.6, 2.7, this baseball team is going to be a serious problem when it comes to the hitters. But Bryson, let's take a look here, man, at the win total for this team last year. One more time, folks, 75 and 87. So this year, can they get 7 more wins? It's set at 81.5. It feels really freaking high, but we just talked about the Marlins win total pretty much came down 7. Can theirs go up 7?
I don't think so. I think they'll be better. I think they're going to be better than the Marlins this year. I think they're going to win more than 75 games, but I have them winning somewhere around 78 games this season. The pitching staff, it does scare me a little bit. You're banking on a lot of guys having bounce back seasons this year in the pitching staff. The batting is just so inconsistent for me. It's hard to bank on a lineup like that for an entire season. So with that, I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I think they're going to finish third. You need them to win 82 games. You need them to be above 500 this season. I just don't think the Mets are an above 500 team.
Anthony, how we feeling?
I love their over right here. I think it's because of the woes of last season. We forget this is the same pieces of a team that made up a 101 win team 2 seasons ago. Like, this are the same guys. I think every single major player on the offensive side underperformed last year. I just don't see that happening again. Like, I think between guys like McNeil, guys like Brandon Nimmo, those guys are used to sitting around the 280 to 300 mark. I think they get closer to that range again. I think Lindor, who's been around a career 280 hitter, he's going to get his average back up. And I think if Pete Alonso is able to make some of these adjustments like we're talking about, this is a lethal offense on paper that becomes a lethal offense on the field, and they're right back to that same Mets team that we've kind of got accustomed to. I don't think they're going to make much of a play to get – I think they could sneak into the postseason. I don't think they're going to be in contention for the title, the division title, but I do think they could totally sneak into that third spot in the division and get into the playoffs.
I will agree with you that they are going to be in the third spot here, but the only thing is you can be in the third spot because the Marlins might suck. We know the Nationals suck, and they very well, like you said, aren't going to be a postseason team. I don't believe they're a postseason team as of today. This win total feels very accurate, though, based on what they got to do here. They won 75 last year. I'm going to jump on the Bryson train here. I'm going to go with the under. I see them as an 80-win baseball team. I think anything less than 80 is a letdown year. I'll be surprised if they get to 82. Is it out of the cards? Absolutely not. If the pitching staff does what we know they can do, if Pete Alonso takes a step up, like we said, there's easily a path for these guys to be a much better baseball team. But 7 games is a lot of game, folks. I'm going to give them 5 games. I can't give them 7. So Anthony going over.
Before I move on real quick, I just want to point something really quick out about the rotation for them. We're looking at all of these projections for the starting rotation. They're not including Kodai Senga right now. He will probably be coming back to, mid-May, early April. So it's not going to be, mid-May, maybe early June, hopefully earlier than that. But when this guy gets back, he was in Rookie of the Year talks last year. If it wasn't for your guy, Corbin Carroll over there, I think he would have won it. This is an elite pitcher, sub-3 ERA last year. Last year, for a pitcher to have a sub-3 ERA, almost impossible. So he will give them a huge bolster once he's able to get back and healthy.
Look, everything you're saying makes complete sense. I agree with you. It's going to be really close. It's just a lot of games, man. It's a lot of games. And so I'm going to go with the under. I know Bryson's on the under, but all of you people going over, can't blame you whatsoever. This could be an 85-win baseball team easily if they just play how they're supposed to play. But they're the New York Mets. Like Anthony said, the Mets. That's how I feel about these guys. I'm going to stick with that. So, hey, let's jump in really quick, though, man. One more team here before we give you guys our winners of the division, everything like that. The Washington Nationals. As we all know, not a very good baseball team. Last year, 71 and 91 on the year, 34 wins at home, 37 wins on the road, just not very good. But compared to all the other divisions, they're not the worst bottom team in the league. 71 wins. At least they broke into the 70s of what they had. You take a look here, Anthony, you mentioned in your article, added some really big guys, Eddie Rosario, Joey Gallo, to name a couple of them. But Bryson, looking here at the Nationals, man, this baseball team, what do you do with them? Are they any type of threat here? Is there any way they get off of being the bottom team in this division?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to finish somewhere in the bottom. To their credit, though, last season, they were top 10 in the MLB in batting average. I believe they were right around 10th. They struck out the second least amount of times in the entire MLB last year, which was fascinating to see. They only struck out 1,149 times. It was almost 100 strikeouts less than the third place spot. So this batting order last season, they did pretty good at getting on base. They did pretty good about not striking out. They don't hit home runs, though. Second least amount of home runs last season. I think getting a guy like Joey Gallo and Rosario should help with that. The one thing Gallo definitely will not do are the batting average and strikeout numbers that they accomplished last year, considering it's been 4 seasons since Joey Gallo has batted above 200, which is terrifying to think of. And he's had 3 straight seasons of over 140 strikeouts, including a 213 strikeout season. So Gallo is going to be a lot of fun to watch this season for the Nationals, if nothing else. Gallo is a fun player to watch because he's going to either have the most ridiculous strikeout in the MLB or the most ridiculous home run. Those are kind of your 2 options with Joey Gallo. So they're going to be, I think they're going to be a little bit better. The batting average should be, or the batting lineup should be a little bit more dangerous. Pitching, it's about the same as it was last year, kind of league average. They're not a great pitching staff. They have a pretty decent closer. I mean, they finished in the top 10 in saves last year. So if they can get to a closer, they have a pretty good shot of winning the game. The problem is the starting lineup isn't great. I have a hard time seeing them finish anywhere above last place in this division.
Fair enough, man. Joey Gallo's got to be the richest guy batting 189 in the entire league. So anyway, that's pathetic. I mean, like Bryson said, I could probably bunt every time and I might be able to hit a 189, just saying. But anyway, looking here, Anthony, I want to talk, man, about the projected 2024 pitching starters, because this has to be one of the bottom pitching rotations in all of baseball. You look here, man, Josiah Gray is your head ace, 494. Patrick Corbin, as we call him, the fade god. If he is pitching, you are fading them every single time. Mackenzie Gore, who I actually believe is probably the best pitcher on this staff, in my opinion. Then you got Jake Irvin, Trevor Williams, and Jackson Rutledge. A lot of 5s, a lot of 4s, no 3s. What the heck do you do with this pitching staff?
You do nothing with it. You put them out there and you see what they're able to do for another season of
prayer.
The one thing that you have to keep in mind with the Nationals, wins and losses this season means absolutely nothing to the front office, to the management, to the coaching staff, to the play. I mean, obviously to the players, it sucks. Not going to lie. Like, you can't be happy losing, over 100 games per year. That's ass. It just sucks. But, they're looking at some of these younger guys. And I think a couple of the names you just mentioned, majority of teams, majority of organizations, these guys would still be in the minors developing. They'd probably still be, AA, AAA. They're going to get an early opportunity for this Nationals team. And that's not only in the pitching staff, that's, across from the bullpen, that's in the lineup as well. They're going to give younger guys opportunities, and they do see things that they like. Some of the younger guys that they do like CJ Abrams, he's a speed demon out there. He stole more than 40 bags for them. Lane Thomas came through, and he really did provide a little bit more of the power spark than was even anticipated for him, being able to hit 28 out, keeping a pretty good average last season. And a couple of the numbers that Bryson just mentioned, there's things that this team does well, and they're getting there. They're figuring out the players, the younger talent that is going to be able to eventually get them to a place where they can break above 500 again. It's a rebuilding team. The progress is slow. Progress is painful, but they are getting there. And I think next year, maybe even the year after that, the Nationals could be right back there.
Bryson, I want to ask you, man, looking at this hitting staff, Anthony just mentioned the number one guy, CJ Abrams. Obviously, his legs are obviously a big part of why he's the number one guy here, probably the best guy here. But looking at the batting, I know we just talked about Joey Gallo, but you look at a guy like in the number 8 spot, Luis Garcia, 275, the best average on this hitting staff. Who do you think is going to be the hitter that carries this whole lineup?
It depends on what you want as a guy who carries your lineup. If you're looking for a guy who's going to lead your team in home runs and RBIs, I have no problem saying it's going to be Joey Gallo. But if you want a more consistent guy who's going to be on base all the time, you know he's going to get at least 1 or 2 hits a game. He's going to be on base almost every game this season. It's probably CJ Abrams. There's a reason he's batting the leadoff spot for this team. Not only is his speed a big factor there, his batting average is pretty solid. It's not great, but it's a pretty solid batting average. So I would imagine CJ Abrams kind of leads the pack for this team.
So you're expecting a decent bounce back, though, from Joey Gallo, because there's 4 dudes on this lineup that have more RBIs last year than him. I mean, do you really think he could carry this team in RBIs? I just don't see it.
I don't know if I would bet on it, but just given Gallo's career, there's a reason he makes so much money. It's because of the fact that in any given season, I don't know why. If he can magically hit 200, he's probably hitting 40 home runs with that 200 season. And with that 40 home runs, you're probably getting 90 to 100 RBIs. So it kind of just depends. I wouldn't bet on it for Joey Gallo leading the team in home runs and RBIs. But if there's going to be someone on this lineup who could do it, it's probably going to come down to him or maybe like Lane Thomas, like Anthony was saying.
Fair enough. Well, hey, fellas, it is that time that we got to do our win projection here. So, Anthony, 66.5. They won 71 games last year. We took the under on the Marlins. Could this be an over here for the Nationals? Can they get 67 of them?
I don't see it. I think they're going to take the under here. I think if you look down where those wins came from last year, there was a couple sweeps against the Mets where the Mets were just doing very Mets things that I don't see them doing again this year. I think you take a couple of those series out of it, and they're already back to that number last season. I do think they take a couple steps back in a couple places. I think pitching is going to be a real struggle for this team. I'm taking the under. Another place where I see a team like the Phillies, like the Braves, taking wins, or it's from a Washington team that I do think is going to be worse.
Bryson, are you with him on the under here, man? Are you going to kind of shock us and go with 67 of them?
I'm actually going to shock you guys and go with the over in this one. It's not going to be by a lot. I see them as around what they were last year. I think this is a very similar team to what they were last year. I think they got better in some spots. I think they did get worse in some areas, but they were, like we mentioned, there were numbers that they did last year that were pretty impressive. To your point, Riggs, they have 2 young pitchers, Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray, back-to-back seasons. Their ERAs improved. They pitched more. They looked better last season than they did the year before. So I think they can continue that trend on getting better as their starting rotation. I don't think they're going to be a great team. I see them somewhere around 69 or 70 wins, a little bit worse than they were last year, but I don't see them dropping to 65. That's a lot. That's a big drop off in wins.
Dude, I am like really stuck here because I like what you're both saying. I feel like an idiot if I'm betting on the over because like I really want to do it, but I'm looking and I'm like, man, like I don't know. Luckily, I did already take 2 other unders, so I can't believe I'm doing it. But I'm going to join Bryson here. I'm going to go with the over. I know, Anthony, I'm sorry. I think 67 is like the number. Like that's where if it was 67.5, I'd go under. But I think they're going to win 67 baseball games, 4 games worse, maybe 3 games worse. But Bryson, you make some good points, man. If you look at the averages in the hitting department, they're not that much worse than everybody else in the division. If you look at the pitching staff, they are bad, but they're pretty much right there with a couple other teams here. So, I mean, really, I don't know, bro. I'm sick to my stomach. I just said over. But anyway, hey, Bryson and I are going to go over. Anthony going to go under. Good luck to you guys there. But really quickly, gentlemen, want to get who you guys have winning the division. I'm assuming it's the Atlanta Braves. But, Anthony, is it going to be Atlanta?
It's going to be the Braves. I don't think that they're going to get the farthest. I think it's going to be the Phillies again, that they're going to sneak in with a wild card spot. They figured out that the recipe to this current format of MLB postseason doesn't matter how you get there. You just got to get to the dance. They're good at getting to the dance, but I do think in the regular season, the Braves are just a better team. They will end up taking this.
Bryson, let's actually play that game instead. Instead of who's going to win because we're all on the Braves, who's going to go the farthest?
God, that's so tough because like Anthony was saying, the Phillies have kind of built that format for just getting in as a wild card and finding a way to win games once you get there. The Braves, I see, they're so similar to the Dodgers in so many ways. Regular season powerhouse. They win a semi-competitive division. They look like the best team in baseball, fall short in the playoffs. The Braves, I think they're talent-wise, they should be able to get through the farther. They should be able to get farther than the Phillies relatively easily. But I'm gonna go against Anthony just because he went with the Phillies, though. I think talent-wise, they're gonna get there. I think this is a season where they put it all together for an entire postseason run.
I'm with you. I think the pitching staff is just too good. I'm going to go Braves all the way. They win the division. They make it the furthest. Should be a lot of fun, guys. One more time, sportsforumdenver.com. Go check out Anthony's NL East article. That's Bryson Owens. That's Anthony Hirsch. I'm Riggs Tamburo. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been episode 2, the NL East. We'll see you for the Central next week.